Welcome to our class. Our class today is on kinesiology, which is basically the study of muscles. And not so much how they work or just the energy that's in the muscles. But you probably hear it by different names. You'll hear it called muscle testing, applied kinesiology, contact reflex analysis, all kind of things. It's all the same thing, just a little bit of a difference in the technique. At first, the first time I was exposed to kinesiology, it was done by a really nice lady, sweetheart of a lady, that she muscle tested me and she told me a couple of things that were right. I thought, this is really cool. So I had her come and teach some of my friends, some fellow herbalists at my house, and my poor spider plant looked like it was ready to be thrown out because I just couldn't find the time to water it. And she muscle tested me and she told me to touch the plant. And I said, okay. And she muscle tested me and she said, the plant still loves you. It knows you're busy. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Okay. And then she said, let's get out some black candles. I go, no, 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 no. So I got turned off of kinesiology for a long time. Then my son, this little goofball down here, I had this picture because he would make faces every time we would do a family portrait. And I told him if he did that, he would be sorry someday. So that's why I use this picture. But I had bought like $1,500 worth of herbs for a fair that I used to go to. And my son was being punished because he did something wrong with school. I don't remember what it is. And I said, I want you to unpack these. And they're like in peanuts. So he's unpacking them. He's standing and taking the bottles out of the box and setting on the right side of the box. He's doing that, and all of a sudden, he is using his left hand, and he's trying to reach over, and he's knocking peanuts everywhere, and he's knocking the bottles over, and he's holding on to a certain bottle of herbs. And I grabbed it off him. I said, what's wrong with you? Stop it. I'm in a hurry. I need to do this. And I put the bottle behind me. Then later on, he's unpacking, and all of a sudden, he's doing the same thing again. And I grabbed the herbs off him. I said, listen, you're going to be doing this all by yourself unless you help me out and do it right. And I put the bottle beside me. So after we were going through, like, all the herbs that I got, I checked off to make sure that I got everything in my order. I'm thinking, I can't find the 2 false unicorn. I know I ordered false unicorn. And I couldn't find it. Then I looked beside me and I saw the herbs, and I picked up the herbs, and both of them were false unicorn. And when my son was unpacking them, he wasn't reading them. He was just taking them out of the peanuts and sticking them to the side. But instinctively, he held on to the false unicorn. So I told my friend that, and I also told my mentor that, and she said, well, he probably knows that he needs something in there. I said, how can he tell through a bottle? She said, well, he must be able to. So I thought, okay, I'm going to prove if this is right or wrong. So I opened up 2 bottles of herbs. They were empty. I washed them out with really hot water. Then I put meat, raw meat, in the one and tightened the lid. Then I washed it with the other one. And the other one was empty. I put them down on the floor, and we had a black lab. And the black lab came in, and it was sniffing around the bottles. And after a while, it was trying to get only in the bottle that had the meat in it. The one that didn't have meat, it didn't try to get in anymore. It did at first, but just a couple of attempts. But it really was, his intent to get into that other one was definitely a lot stronger. So I thought, I don't think you can smell anything, especially since I washed it and I went through all those things. So there must be a little pores in the plastic enough that a dog can sense it. So I thought, I am going to see again about this kinesiology. And these are some of the things that made it make sense to me. One is, I'm probably dating myself, but back in the old days when I was young, we would have a radio. And if there was something coming on that we wanted to hear and it was not quite loud, it was like losing the station. If you put your hand on the radio or on the antenna, the impulse would be carried through you to that, and the station would be louder. Did anyone remember those days? Nobody?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I'm not that old. Yeah, I do. I remember going closer to it and it got louder, and same if like it was staticky.
Right. You're coming clear. Good.
I remember too, you guys.
Okay, good. Well, that
Bunch
makes
of
me feel
babies
a
here.
little better. A little better. Okay, so I knew that we must do something to conduct electricity somehow. And indeed we are. We conduct both electricity and part of our nervous system is chemicals. We know that we conduct electricity because of EKG, electrocardiogram, which is they can measure the electrical impulses in your heart, or EEG, electroencephalogram, where they measure electrical impulses through the nervous system. So knowing that, I thought maybe there's something to this kinesiology thing. Then I read all articles that I could on animal instincts. Again, thinking about my black lab, because a couple of times our black lab would get a little sour tummy or something, just wasn't feeling good, wouldn't eat, and we let her outside. She would go all around and sniff around, then all of a sudden she'd eat a certain kind of grass. And I read that sometimes animals do that because they have this instinct of what's good for them. They are drawn to it. So my last example is this. If someone opens up something and says, here, smell it. If it would be, let's say it would be skunk urine, and you go to smell it, your first reaction would be to go backwards. But if it was something like lavender or roses or something that smells good, honeysuckle, your first impulse would be to go forward towards it. With all that information, I became a lot more comfortable with the idea of kinesiology. Being able to test the strength of the electrical system or the electrical current in the body, because we instinctively know what is good and not good for us. So did everybody follow that? Okay.
Yes.
So this is what kinesiology can show you. It can indicate nutritional deficiencies, whether or not you have a virus and the location of the virus, whether you have a bacteria in you and the location of it, or yeast or a fungus. It can test your polarity. Now this isn't like if somebody's bipolar. That's something different. But if you're cross-polar, which means that things that make you strong would make the average person weak and vice versa. An example of this is when I was young, probably about 14, my dad took a heart attack and he was in intensive care and they gave him a shot of Valium to calm him down. And my dad became a little bit agitated and the doctor says, well, we need to calm him down, so we're going to give him Valium. For people who don't know, Valium is something that does usually calm people down. They gave him another shot. And it wasn't until they gave him the third shot they realized that my dad was cross-polar. So things that calmed him down, calmed the average person down, was causing him to be agitated. My son also is cross-polar. So whenever he would go over to the neighbor's house and drink Pepsi with caffeine in it, I would always know because he'd come home and was watching TV. He'd fall asleep. Caffeine allowed him to sleep rather than get him juiced up like the average person. Okay, I hear somebody in the background. Is there a question?
Kevin asked to be unmuted. Did you have a question?
No.
No? Okay. Hey, Kevin.
Just having trouble here, and now I've got it unmuted.
Okay. Alrighty. So, we can also see the energy that the organs are able to output. You know, if an organ or gland is weak, you can pick that up through kinesiology. If it's hyper or hypo, like your thyroid or whatever, what's the best nutrient? Let's say you have cardio assurance, you have ginkgo hawthorn, and you have HS. They all nourish the heart. Which ones might be best for you? Kinesiology can tell you that. The more your body needs it, the stronger that you will test. And what to work on first? Contact reflex analysis, you follow a certain pattern of how you test, and it lets you know which one is the thing you need to work on right now. Acid alkalinity balance. You can find out if what's weakening your body is environmental, structural, emotional, or electrical. And this is something that I didn't think of until my upline manager and I had a health food store for a very short period of time, is muscle testing can also enhance the placebo effect. You know, doctors sound like, oh, the placebo effect, that's just a placebo effect, like it's something bad. But if someone says, okay, yeah, I'm going to take these herbs, I think it would help me, but they might do it 50%. If they get muscle tested and they can feel the difference that their body really wants that, they'll have more confidence in it and they might do it 70%. So these are the things, the main things that I think kinesiology can help you with. What kinesiology cannot show, and there's people that will argue with me over this, but I am convinced of this. Matter of fact, the lady who wanted to burn the black candles would disagree with me. It cannot determine your future. It can't give you universal knowledge. So you can't, like, on your math test say, okay, MC squared equals, you know, that. It's not that kind of thing. And not diagnose a disease. It can diagnose weaknesses. So it can say, it can indicate that you have weakness in your lung, but it can't say, oh, it's emphysema or it's asthma. Hang on a second. Say something, please, Joanne.
Has anybody ever, I know Raven, you said you've done it before. Has anyone else ever done any muscle testing or kinesiology? I find it fascinating.
Joanne.
Yes, hi.
Hi. I've tried. I'm not real good at it yet.
Oh, Deb says she does it all the time. I guess it's probably one of those things where practice makes perfect.
It
How
is.
you do it.
It is.
Oh,
And
okay, you're back.
yeah, I am. Sorry, one of my grandkids came over. And a lot is practice makes perfect, and it's also you need to know the limitation, you know? Because one time I used just common sense and just analytically told this one lady she needs 12 parsley a day. Then my upline manager got one of my downline managers to muscle test because I couldn't make it one day for like an update. And when she tested her, she says, "Oh, no, 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 you only need 2 of those a day." And she says, "I don't know, Mary said I needed, 12 a day." I said, "No, no, you just need 2 a day." So the lady stopped taking it and just was taking 2 a day. About a month later, she ended up in the hospital. And she was having all kind of problems. She was angina and stuff like that. And when they tested her, her potassium was dangerously low. So not all people that muscle test are always right. However, muscle testing is really cool. I'm not poo-pooing it, or I wouldn't even be teaching a class on it. But realize there's limitations. Realize what someone believes to be true can sometimes get involved in that. So I don't use it as my only point of reference. I usually have something else that helps back it up a little bit. Also realize not all people can be tested. People have a hard time muscle testing me. And usually it's because your energy or the person's energy is too low. In my case, I think it was because it's too high. Because I muscle test strong all the time. Even things that should be testing low, I'm still strong on. The polarity can be reversed, and we're going to show you how to straighten up the polarity a little bit. And it is an art more than a science. There is a lady named Lillian Rosio, and her muscle testing, she is a Picasso or a Da Vinci or whatever. She can just go bloop, bloop, and so is Gail Bilodeau. She's just amazing what she can do. And you cannot have a preconceived notion. And I think that's what happened with the lady who said she was taking too much parsley. She had a preconceived notion that, wow, 12 is so many. But it turned out later on, we found out that the lady had a really bad kidney, and her kidney was just dumping all the potassium, and that's why she needed 12. The average person doesn't need 12 potassium a day.
There's a comment. Shirley said she knows people whose energy is so high that they can't even wear watches because the batteries stop working.
Well, I know people that their energy is too low. They can't wear watches because their battery dies. I would go and buy a watch that was on sale because I knew the battery was going to be dying soon. And I would wear it for maybe 2.5, 3 years. My battery, whenever I take my herbs and I'm being a good girl and everything like that, my battery lasts a lot longer than the average person. So I think it's the opposite way.
And I saw your question, Shirley. I'm sorry I didn't get to it yet. She wants to know if this is similar to the way pendulums work.
Pendulum works on the energy as well. Yes. Now the pendulum, I don't feel as comfortable with, only because I have this mental block. I like things to be scientific. Before I would even consider kinesiology, I put meat in a bottle, maybe see if my dog would eat it, for Pete's sakes. I take very little on faith. I want to be analytical. So I haven't looked into pendulums too much, although I know people that I really, really respect say that the pendulum works very good. Same with what they call them, dowel rods. That does work really good too. I have this mental block on that. But try it. If it works for you, then, and if it's consistently right, then you're one of the kind of people that can do it. But because I'm so stubborn and having to make sure that everything works out scientifically, I fall out on that.
And
But
there's a comment. Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Go ahead.
Kevin says he knows somebody who works with the pendulums and it works the same way.
And I do too. The Joy of Health outside of Murraysville, the one lady there used a pendulum and unbelievable. I mean, she was just amazing. I just haven't done that, and I don't teach that part of it because if I suck at something, I'm not going to teach you. You know what I mean? Okay, so before you even think about muscle testing people, there's certain things that I would suggest that you do. One is to prepare yourself. I would wear a polarizer. And if I didn't see this for myself, I would not have believed it. My aunt went with me to see Stephen Horn, and Stephen Horn were selling this exact brand of diodes. A diode kind of blocks negative energy coming in. So it manipulates energy fields, I guess you'd call it. My aunt, to make sure she could watch Stephen Horn the whole class, put brand new batteries in her hearing aid. And she got these diodes, and when she bought them, she just stuck them in her pocket. We weren't even 1/3 through the class, and her batteries were dead as a doornail. Another friend of mine, Melissa Shaw, and I were reading people's eyes. And there are some people that we call energy vampires. I've met a few in my life, and two of the few people that I met like that lived near one of those big towers that has electricity going through it. You know, like you see them along farmlands and stuff like that. They're huge. I don't know what they're called. They're not called energy towers, but anyhow, this one lady would come to me and she'd have me read her eyes, and after she said, "Oh, I just feel better already." And when she left, I had to take a nap. I felt like she sucked every bit of energy out of me. Well, Melissa and I one time were reading people's eyes, and I looked over at Melissa, and Kevin knows Melissa. She was a ball of energy. She really was a ball of energy. She's part American Indian, and she was short and bouncy and happy. And I looked at her when she was reading this one gentleman's eye, and it looked like somebody just drained her. Just like you could almost see the blood pool out of her face. She hadn't been wearing her diode. That gentleman had had cancer, stage 4 cancer, and he was pulling all the energy right out of her. So I do feel comfortable in diodes. And you can put them on your computer. I don't have it right now because I have a different monitor, but I used to have one on up in the top left-hand side of my thing. So protect yourself because there are energy vampires. Anyone here that does muscle testing, have you ever been zapped by an energy vampire? Of course, they don't like suck out of your neck or anything like that. It's just they pull all that energy from you. Yeah, see? So I'm not the only one. I advocate doing this, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of muscle testing. I would wear them whenever I went to the fair, and I would read sometimes 39 people's eyes in a day. And I couldn't do it without my diode. The diode really helped me. Okay.
Kevin says he puts his shields up all in the intent.
Yeah, some people can do that. Again, I have a hard time with that. I have this mental block. This I know, this they use in radios. They use diodes in radios to kind of ground over electricity. So I agree, Kevin, you're playing above where I am when it comes to this stuff, the art of this. But I'm glad you brought it up.
He said it takes practice.
I bet.
Mary,
Oh,
what is a diode? What do you guys use for a diode?
I have this one. This is one I have. I have about 4 of them. They're Cook Slim Diode, and if you type this in, and if you can't get the word, you email me and I will send you what this says. And just type it in Google, you'll find people that still sell it. It looks exactly the same. And then you wear it for about 6 months or a year, depends how much you use it, and you take it outside and you put it in the sun and it recharges. So I've had mine 20 years, and if I put them outside, they recharge and they still work. Then you put them on your left side because your energy comes in your left hand, spins around your solar plexus and goes out your right foot, and it comes in your left foot, spins around the solar plexus and goes out your right hand. That's how the electrical motion is in our body. So you put it on your left side so you don't absorb anyone's negative energy. Okay, was there another question, Joanne?
Well, there was a question about where to get the diodes, and someone's saying if you can repeat that about the left foot and hand.
Yeah. I got my diodes off Stephen Horn. And I got one off of Wendell Whitman. Wendell Whitman is dead right now. Stephen Horn, I don't know if he still sells them or not. But if you type Energy Polera T products and Cook Slim Diode, you will find it on the internet that you can buy them. Oh, look at that. You're such a sweetie, Joanne. Joanne found a place, evidently. So this is a link. So she put the link in there. You click on there, and then you can look at products and find it. They have different types. Oh, they changed it a little bit. That's expensive. Mine wasn't near that. Of course, that was like 20-some years ago, too. You probably find a little bit cheaper than that, I'm thinking. Okay, are there any other questions?
Yes, and can you repeat about the left foot, the left side? And
okay, like this is my butt. This is my back end, okay? That's my butt. It's bigger than that. Okay, so it comes in my arm, my left arm, spins around the solar plexus, which is a bundle of nerves right behind the belly, right behind the stomach. And then it goes out my right leg. It comes in my left leg, spins around the solar plexus, and goes out my right arm. So you really shouldn't wear your watch on your left hand, on your left arm, because especially if it's a metal watch the whole way around, it will block you getting energy from the earth, good energy. Not necessarily block bad energy, but the good energy. Because we get energy from the ground. Have you ever heard of people doing something called grounding, where they take their shoes and socks off and they walk in the yard, in the field or whatever, to get the energy from the earth? There's a really good book called Pigs Like Dirt. And Wendell Whitman was selling it for a while. And it was about this guy who had these pigs. And they decided they were going to go commercial. They got this big piece that was flattened, and they put cement down, and they made cages or little bins, whatever you say, pens that you put the pigs in so that they could hose it down to keep it clean for convenience. after about a generation, the pigs were infertile. They weren't getting piglets. The pigs were doing what pigs will do, but nothing was happening from it. So they sold a bunch of these piglets that were infertile to a farmer down the road, just an old country farmer, old-fashioned farmer. And then they started over from scratch, and they bought a bunch of the pigs. After a couple generations, all those pigs became infertile. So they put an ad in that they would buy a bunch of pigs, and this guy down the road says, I have pigs out the wazoo. I'll sell you some pigs. And they were saying, well, where'd you get your pigs? He says, well, they came from the ones that you sold me. Really cheap. And they said, well, why were they infertile for us? He said, because pigs need to wallow in the dirt for the energy to be able to reproduce. So we get energy from the earth, but we also pull in energy from people who are sick, which is low energy. Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a question. Have you ever tried using crystals or stones for like bad energy, or just the diodes?
I know people do that. I just use the diodes.
Okay. Do you think it would work the same?
I don't know. It could. The only reason why I did is because, for one thing, Wendell Whitman and Stephen Horn are two of the most amazing herbalists I've ever met in my life. And that's what they suggested. So that was good enough for me. And then, like I said, I know they can use diodes to, you don't ground electricity, but you keep the electricity from arcing when it comes to radios. So it seemed a little more scientific, and again, I'm too left brain that I need science. So I use those. But yes, there's a lot of people that do use crystals and stones. I don't. If I'd find a study that proved it, then I might. But this has been more proven, And I'm not saying the way, I wish that I could just let go and use my intuition more. But I have to dissect everything. And when I teach you things, the reason I pull apart in little pieces is because that's how I feel comfortable with things. I need to understand how things work, not just the fact that they do work.
Okay, thank you. Shirley had a comment that orgone pendants work the same way. They're supposed to help with EMFs.
Okay. Well, good. Alrighty, so that is the first things that you do. Then you make sure the person who is doing the testing and the person who's being tested has enough water in their system. So the few times that I actually do it, I make sure the person drinks about 8 ounces of water before I test them. And I don't give it to them so they hurry up and check it down. I'll give it to them like in the beginning of me doing a consultation. I figure out what I need, and then if I do a muscle testing, it's usually at the end. So the water has been in them and all their tissues hydrated. And I always drink water, so. I usually suggest they take off jewelry and metal, especially something that goes the whole way around the neck or the whole way around the wrist or the whole way around the ankle. Not all people do this, but that's how I was taught. Okay, and then make sure that whenever the person you're testing does not have his tongue touch the roof of his mouth, because that makes a circuit. And I was told that it's best if the tester and the testee look straight ahead, because whenever you look in somebody's eyes, there's a mingling of energies there. There was a book that was written by Reader's Digest, and it was on auras and energy medicine. And it showed, not a kiliograph. What's those cameras that can take a picture of your aura? Kiliograph, is that it? Well, anyhow, there's a camera that can take a picture of energies and auras. So what they would do is they have people just standing next to each other, and they would take the picture, and they would have two separate auras. Then they had them standing the same distance, but looking at each other's eyes. And you could see that the auras were going towards each other and mingling. So look straight ahead. Then it is best to ask the permission. So you don't have to say, can I please do this? What I usually do is say, there's some muscle testing, and then I'll say, are you ready? And they'll say yes. Okay? Any questions about this?
Yes. Well, Shirley said it's called a Kirlian camera.
Yes, thank you. Very good.
And why don't you want to make a circuit?
You do want to make a circuit, but you don't want the energies to mingle together. Okay, you have a car battery, right? You have a positive and negative. You have to have both a positive and a negative touching to make a circuit. Either put it on the battery or put it on the car or something to make a circuit. But what you don't want to do is to take a large screwdriver and put across the north and the south pole. Or take the two ends of the jumper cables and stick them together. So you want to make a circuit like this. Like say this is something, this is something. So you want a circuit like this, but you don't want this kind of a thing going on.
Said thank you. And Kevin says that he keeps a bottle of water for both him and the client. And he said he has to stay focused on the client when he muscle tests, so it's not like having a drop call like on a cell phone.
Okay. But do you look them in the eye, or do you look like you're thinking about them, but you don't look them in the eye, do you, Kevin?
He says no.
Okay. Alrighty. Because if I'm teaching these guys the way that I learned how to do this. If there's other little things that you learn, please do say it. Because I'm the first to let you know that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Excuse the analogy here. To get this done. I'm telling you the ones that work for me and I feel most comfortable with. But there's more than one way here. Then when you test, the stronger the person is, usually means that that part of the body is healthy, or yes to the answer that you were thinking about, the question you're thinking, or that it's a correct herb, so it's positive, while weak indicates low energy, a body part is unhealthy, no, or that supplement is not good for you.
There's a comment. Donna says the person being tested should face north, and no rubber sole shoes should be worn. Never look the client in the eye, and also ask permission to touch the client before you reach into their energy field.
Okay. The two of those I absolutely agree with. The other ones I didn't know you had to be north. Quite frankly, I'm not really sure where north is half the time. But I do know that you look straight ahead. I do know that you do ask permission. I do that when I read eyes too. I'll say, do you mind if I, tilt your head like this? I try to remember to do that because that's your own personal space. And our first reaction whenever someone starts leering at us is to back off, You want to work together for a common goal of getting them healthy, and you don't want them to have any emotional walls set up between the two of you. Okay, so make sure that both people are hydrated. We talked about that. Make sure you're prepared, and we talked about the preparing. Find a baseline. So what you do, and I'm going to tell you different ways of doing it, but just you'll test someone's muscle to see how strong it is, so you know how strong it is. You don't put herbs in there. You don't check a certain body part. At first, you just get an idea of their overall chi, their overall energy and strength. Then you make sure that their polarity is okay. And there's different ways of doing that. We'll go, I kind of did this backwards. If their polarity is off, and I'm going to tell you how to do their polarity in a second, you can have someone thump or rub their thymus gland, rub the mastoid behind the ear. Some people close the ileocecal valve. I don't do that. Or they can hold bee pollen, spirulina. I know someone that would have bee pollen, the little chunky bee pollen, and have the person put it under their tongue while they muscle test. Now, this is actually the muscle testing. You are going to complete a circuit. So you're going to put your one hand here. That's a hand. And then this is a hand, this is a hand that you're going to push down on to test them. If it stays strong and straight, no bounce at all, then that is a yes or a strong, or it's good for you, or whatever question you asked. If it's real bouncy, that it breaks very easily, then that would be a no. And this is the muscle that you're testing right here. It's not a battle of the wills, and that is a big part. I don't do this muscle testing as much as most people do because I'm competitive and I push too hard. You don't really need to push hard at all. So, this is a way of testing your polarity, different ways. One is you have the person take this hand and put it on top of their head with the palm down, and you test it to see about how strong it is. Then you have them put their palm up like this, and you test again. This should be stronger than that. If it's not, then their polarity is the opposite. Instead of the energy running the way that I told you, up the left arm, down the right leg, up the left leg, down up the right arm, it's the opposite way. So the testing would be the opposite of what is true. So you want to make sure that you find out if they're cross-polar. Another way you can do it is by taking your hand and pass their face in this direction, and then use the back of your hand and do it. If this should be the one that is strong, this one not as much. Another way you can do is take your hand around somebody's belly button, towards the belly button, and swish it up, straight up past their head, and muscle test them, and then go down and muscle test them. The up should be stronger. And then the last one, they put their hand on their belly button, and you muscle test them. Then you put your hand on top of their belly button, and you test them. You putting your hand on top of their belly button should make it a little bit weaker. Okay, Are there any questions about any of that?
There's just some comments. Two people say when they muscle test, they don't do the north thing or the rubber soles, and there's a comment to make sure that you remove anything from their person, so credit cards, cell phones, crystals, necklaces, everything should be removed.
Ah,
And Kevin said it took him 4 months of practice to get it, ring in, ring finger method, and he tests using, he says, my name is, and ask, not their name.
oh, okay. There you go. Good. I'm glad you guys are adding to that. Thank you. Okay, so usually why someone's polarity is off is because they're dehydrated. And you can whenever you do this thingy here, just take your hand and just pull on their hair, not hard, but just like tug a little bit and muscle test them. If it is really weak, then you know that they're dehydrated, and that's the thing. Sometimes I found that if someone's on a really strong diuretic, that they may be very dehydrated. And I've already had someone need a little more than 8 ounces of water. But that doesn't happen all the time. It's kind of rare. Another thing is they might have a weakness in their thymus. A thymus is a gland that starts at like right where your neck ends. That's where it is whenever you're a kid. And after you go through puberty, it kind of sags to around where your cleavage is. Do you ever see, they always say Tarzan, oh, goes like that he thumps his thymus gland. So right where you would thump if you were like playing Tarzan or an ape or something, that's where your thymus gland is. So like I said before, you can tap it, you can rub it. If the person has really, really low self-esteem, they've been downbeaten all their life, they might have more of a tendency towards become cross-polar. A trauma, I know one of the times I went for a lecture, they talked about they muscle tested someone that was in a car accident. And no matter what they did with rubbing and whatever, they had a hard time getting them, so they didn't keep on going back to cross-polar. Electric magnetic fields, and that would be the phone. I'm so glad you said about the phone. Could the person or somebody email me and remind me to put no cell phones in pocket? I just didn't think of that, but that's a very good thing. And jewelry and stuff like that. They might be in very poor health, or their immune system might be run down. So these are the reasons for cross-polarity. It works better if you try to correct the polarity than just to think, well, everything's the opposite. Okay. Any other questions?
So how would you work to correct their polarity?
I would give them Thyme J. I would give them, if I had it here, Thyme J, Spirulina, bee pollen. These are the ones I usually use. The other ones that are here, people had told me they use as well. But these bee pollen is really good if you just get the powdered bee pollen and put a couple under the tongue, then it helps right away. But you don't want to leave someone with cross-polar. When I find someone who's cross-polar and they keep switching back after they like thump their thymus, then I suggest usually one of these 3 supplements.
Hey, Mary.
Whoa, hi, how you doing, Sherry?
Real good. That big old roaring voice of mine. Hey, do you keep them on that to
Yeah,
keep their
usually,
polarity straight?
yeah, I usually do that to straighten out their polarity for a little while.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a comment that a lot of trapped emotions or PTSD can also affect it.
Yeah, trauma. Yeah, low self-esteem and trauma. Absolutely, I agree.
And if they are allergic to bee stings, don't give bee pollen. And Donna says she uses Chinese mineral chi for polarity.
Okay, that's another one. Bee pollen. I didn't know you can't get bee pollen for someone who's allergic to bee stings because, quite frankly, bee pollen. I didn't know that. I'd have to think about that. I know you should keep someone away from honey. That so I don't know. I didn't think of that. Good point. All right. Any other comments or questions? This is really, really, really going to be good.
That's it.
Okay. There's somebody called Dr. Versatile Dahl. I might be pronouncing it wrong. He's a chiropractor. And he came up with this particular contact reflex analysis. You put on the person's right hand side, which is your left, right master allergy, and you're touching them. So that makes a circuit. And then you push down. Then you go to left master allergy and you push down. Then you do heart blood, which is in the center. Then metabolic, hemoglobin, coronary, and yeast is a little bit lower. That looks like it's going down yonder, but it's like to the belly button. His 731, he says that if you do this, it will kind of help you prioritize what you need to work on. Some people do it through chakras. These are the 7 chakras. So they would put it over the head, then they would do it right in the forehead, and then across the throat, heart, solar plexus, sacrum, and this is where the solar plexus is right here. The one on the throat often picks up the thyroid. Whenever someone does the throat, they usually have their hand flat. And again, there's different techniques. So they usually have their hand flat across the front. So like their hand would be like this. It's hard to draw with a mouse image. Okay, so that's what they would do for the throat. Whenever they do thyroid, they usually do 2 fingers on the left side of the thyroid and on the right side of the thyroid and on the left side of the thyroid. And then I think there's another one for thyroid. But you get online and they'll show you all kind of points of how people do it. So those are what you can use as a I don't want to say diagnosing tool. You can't diagnose a disease, but a diagnostic tool. That's the main ways. And again, there's a few others that they do it in a little bit different order. They can test your kidney, the liver. There's some people that do that. They'll go through all the organs and glands of the body. And the area, because if you notice the chakra is pretty large. So if, for instance, you are going to do the thyroid or the throat chakra, you don't have to worry about it being exactly there. It's not like acupuncture. It's the area is pretty wide, and what you intend and think has a lot to do with it. So I know I've already gone to classes and someone will put their finger here and they'll say, is that good enough? Well, yeah, anywhere in this area. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Kevin says that he finds a percentage of each chakra. Start by what one is muscle test, usually the lowest percentage. Releasing those trapped emotions increase percentage back up to 100%.
I have no idea what that means. Kevin, can you unmute and maybe say it? Do you understand what that means, Joanne?
No.
Okay. I think I'm missing
Okay,
something.
I'm unmuted, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
What part don't understand? Trapped emotion?
I find the percentage of each chakra start by what? Oh, so you do the chakras and you
Because
say,
yeah, I find the percentage of each chakra, whether it's 100 start or 100 up, it usually goes down to 60 or 50, and that can percentage of each one of them. And then usually it'll muscle test which one it wants to do first, which ends up usually the lowest percentage one. And the body wants it fixed because it wants it back up to homeostasis, basically.
right. So you go like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,
Yeah.
90, 100. Oh, I see.
And then,
That's the process.
and usually it's the trapped emotions that are causing it to be low. So I end up finding the trapped emotion, or post-traumatic stress disorder is kind of a trapped emotion. It's still a block for whatever reason.
No doubt.
When I find that block, and I usually hit it right on, your subconscious mind holds everything that you've done in your life, and it's there. It wants to get rid of it. So I end up releasing those, and it usually brings it back up. But it's a release. It's a I use the analogy of fear of water syndrome. A 2-year-old falls in the water, and from then on, it can't deal with the water. So now it's got to move. It's got to move in its subconscious mind, and every time it gets near the water, the anxiety kicks in.
Right.
Which, what I try to do is say, release the emotion of the water, of the memory of the water. Any movie that we see, the emotion is in the music. It's in its tone of voice. It's in the music. Take away all that tone of voice and music, and make the picture silent. You remember falling in, but all the emotions attached to it is no longer there. Therefore, you don't have to feel it.
Ah, okay.
So when I release the trapped emotion, a lot of times their well-being, they're feeling much more happy because they don't have to relive the experience. They might remember the movie, but they don't remember the emotional part of it.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Right.
So that's what you do is you allocate by 10% each one of these?
Well, a lot of times the percentages is just a percentage, and as I release them, it just keeps going up. It doesn't have to go by 10%. It just goes by what the body says.
But how do you know what the body says?
When I muscle test it.
Okay, so
I asked it, okay, is the throat chakra 100%? No, and then it goes down to 50. And then I start releasing the trapped emotion for that particular one.
okay.
And then after every one I release, where's the percentage at now? And so, is there another trapped emotion? Yes or no? Yes. And then I end up releasing another one. Is there another trapped emotion? Yes or no? Yes. And then I to retest to see where the percentage is at, so that you can get it back up to 100%. And you can't do too many in all one session because the body cannot release so much at once. It's just you only need to do about 7 to 10, and that's it. And then you got to stop. Yeah. Sometimes it's too traumatizing to release so much.
Okay. And you do mostly, whenever you do muscle testing, most of what you work with is just emotions, right?
No, because you can also do the physical, just like you were talking about. Is this environmental? Is this about physical? Is this about something? I do the herbs. I find out what herbs they need. You talked about the weakness of the particular organs. You can find out the percentage of each organ. Is your thyroid running at 70%, 60%, 50%? And then I could muscle test kelp. Okay, will this work for me? Yes or no? And then yes. Okay, how many need to take a day? 1 or 2 for like 2 or 3 weeks to get the percentage up so it's running better. And then you can taper down. And then I usually tell them to taper down to like 2 or 3 a week because your body doesn't need it. You finally got your levels back up. Okay. You taught me about female comfort. I had a lady that her was down about 50%, and I didn't know what was going on. I just told her to take female comfort for like 2 a day for like 3 weeks or something like that. And she come back to me about 6 weeks later, and she didn't tell me anything. I just was releasing a lot of trapped emotions, but I realized her female problems, or it's just running low, and she didn't tell me anything, and I didn't need to know. About 6 weeks later, she come back to me and says, now, what did you do? So I told her about the tractor hormone. She says, yeah, I understand that, but about the herbs part. I said, well, just basically feeding what it's lacking. She says, well, I've been going to the doctor. Says they're about ready to yank things out, but now everything's working fine.
Good.
So I do the herbs, too. You can muscle test almost anything. I mean, I had a headache one day, and I had to figure out, okay, now what's the underlying reason for the headache? The body says, oh, I don't understand that. So like you said about diagnosis, the body doesn't understand medical terminology. So I rephrased it. Is there a reason for a pain in my head? Oh, yeah. Okay. And I found out there were certain sausages. I ate a sausage the day before, and that caused a headache, and it had to be the nitrate. So I have to, you're right. It does not recognize medical terminology. It just understands basic pain, toxins. I use an analogy of a toxin like a splinter. A splinter could be a piece of glass, a piece of wood, a piece of stone, whatever. It doesn't care. It just doesn't need to be there. It's just a toxin.
Right.
If that makes any sense, right? So you have to keep the questions really simple. We use Dr. Bradley Nelson uses the body code because it could be emotional, but it also could be bacterial, could be virus, could be environmental, it could be certain foods, certain herbs, whatever. So you can go in different directions of this any way you want to.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yes. Someone wants to know, how does he release the emotions, and if there's a list of the emotions related to each chakra?
The emotion is attached. The subconscious identifies emotion with it based upon what the emotion was. It could be abandonment. It could be unworthy. It could be taken advantage of. There's about 70 emotions that he uses, and it depends on what the emotion was. You've got an abandonment issue. You've got taken for granted. You've got
Well, how about
a
this?
number of
Do certain emotions settle in different chakras?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a list of those?
Well, it depends on how. Let's put it this way. You talked about the throat chakra. Sometimes it's related to not able to speak for themselves. So sometimes they felt like they were intimidated and they never spoke up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
You know
it
what I mean?
does.
Okay, so that, the solar plexus sometimes hold all this past and they can't let go of the past.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
So is
So
there?
that's the emotion.
Is there
so
any?
that's the emotion attached to it. So whatever the body perceives it, I don't question it. It's just because of whatever happened at a particular age. I usually find the emotion and then the age associated with it. Like, it's age. Like I went back to my mom at age 3, and the word was horror. I go, Mom, what happened at age 3 was horrifying. I didn't know my mom that well. She says, oh, yeah, that's when they took my tonsils out and they fell down my throat and I almost choked to death. For a 3-year-old, that makes sense. And I go, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So it's amazing how the body knows the subconscious mind knows everything. I can't give you the answer where it goes, but every person I do is always different because everybody's got a different past.
Mary,
Yeah.
do you care if I ask this gentleman a question?
No, I don't care if he doesn't care.
Okay. So you say you release the emotion in that. How do you release it?
Usually I do. You got the chakras, and they're all on the spinal column, and they're all down the spinal column. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
Mary, you got them right down there, right down over the head and over the spinal column.
Right.
And usually run your fingers, or you can run a magnet over it, and that changes the polarity. And that's also the intent, and that releases it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Do you teach this, Kevin?
Yes, I do.
Would you want to get with me sometime to make a PowerPoint app that you can teach people how to do this?
Yeah, a lot of times I use some of Dr. Brad's.
Yeah, but if I'm gonna do this, I don't want to use anybody else's pictures or anything, because I was sued for $3,000 for using a picture of a family that belong to
Okay.
somebody else. But would you do that?
Yeah, because when I do a personal class in where we're at, I have the muscle test each other using their fingers. And then all of a sudden they get it because they can do each other's arms or fingers without me doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really makes a lot of, all of a sudden, when you feel it in your fingers or your arm, you go, whoa, then you just wake up. Because I also do the sway test.
Yeah,
I have
we're
them do the
going to
sway
get to that
test.
in a minute. Yeah, we're going to do that in a minute.
All right, never mind.
Well,
Hey,
no,
Mary.
but I'm just saying how to release the emotions, how to figure out the emotions. If you would want to teach that sometime,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, so
And
contact.
you have a lot of good stuff on there related to what I do. There's just a lot more, but that's, like I said, muscle testing is good. I do my wife and a lot of people all the time. They call me up and say, all right, and I can do it over the phone using my own fingers as a proxy. Which, if nobody doesn't understand that, relate to this. We all got cell phones. How are we connected between the cell phones? There's no wire between the cell phones. It's all energy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
when I'm working on somebody that's in Arkansas, I can work on them using the phone, but it's my intent to connect with them, and I can connect with them. And I don't know if that's over somebody's head, but I use the cell phone theory. She's got a cell phone. I got a cell phone. We're connected. There's no wire. So it works on the same principle, if that makes any sense. Or the analogy is, let's say your son is in California and you got this bad feeling all day long. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. About 6 hours later, you get a call from the doctor. Your son's in the hospital. How did you know that?
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
Right. Because there's that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about being connected. So
Okay, well
that
then,
makes sense.
if you can, contact me, email me the
All
next
right.
day or two, and we'll figure out a time, and then I'll post it for people.
I got to come up with how do I put it on PowerPoint presentation?
I can help you with that. That I can help
Okay.
you.
Well,
Okay?
I mean, the subject matter too is what I was trying to come up with, but
But I'll ask you
anyway.
questions. We'll get it. We'll get it done. We will.
Okay.
And do you mind if we add your information here? I see while you were talking, I was looking, there's a bunch of people who'd like to know your contact information.
All right.
Do you mind giving it?
You want email or you want cell phone or which one do you want?
Whatever you feel
Both?
comfortable.
Cell phone.
How you spell your name? Bennett?
Bennett.
Okay.
Bennett.
All right. And so give me your information. I'm going to type it in the chat.
570-861-2601. I could almost demonstrate right on the phone call here, but I would have to usually if I have to know the name of the person and yes, the permission of the person. And then once I know that person's name and stuff, I usually can connect. And
Well, you
I
know
could
what?
probably demonstrate.
Why don't we do that at the end
Okay.
so they understand fully everything that's going on?
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. And then at the end, if somebody wants to volunteer, or maybe you can do me.
Okay. But either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And your email. Do you want to give your email out?
Yeah, it's K.R. Bennett, but it's KRBENET at hotmail.com.
KRBEN.
ET
Okay.
at hotmail.com. I'm considered an emotional code practitioner with Dr. Bradley Nelson. So his technique is about the easiest one. I've been involved with a couple other ones. His is straightforward. It makes sense because I worked with another lady and I was totally clueless with her because there was no logic to it. So with this technique, it was much easier I grabbed a hold of it. It was just so easy.
Okay. I have a feeling you're going to be contacted quite a bit after this class.
Yeah.
Okay. So other things we can test for. Thank you very much for being willing
There's
to.
one more.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Someone wants to know where he learned his technique from.
Well, back in the day when I was working with Mary, I let one of those people. Remember that fair we went to, Mary? You were doing iridology in a mall
Yeah.
years and years ago. Rosie Boito had her own table, and I went to her quite by accident because I was going around all them, and she did my fingers, and I was like totally. But I did see Wendell doing. I think it was Wendell that I saw him doing muscle testing. He was doing basic stuff. I went down her office. And talk about divine intervention. She says, you're supposed to be here. And there's the whole story along with it. I don't have time to tell you, but I knew I was supposed to be there, and it was $1,000 class, but I didn't have it. She had a lot of work for me to do, so I spent 2 weeks working with her, learning from her. But I tell you what, she cleared out a lot of baggage out of me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of, because I was single when I was raising kids by myself, and
Eight kids. He was raising 8 kids all by his lonesome when I met him.
So I had a lot of trapped emotion, and she cleared a lot of stuff out. So that's the reason why I have a testimony, because if it hadn't been for her, I probably would never have been a nurse, because people were just too scared.
Mm-hmm.
So that released a lot of stuff. But I was working with other people, but also was working with myself. And then she later on, I went back to her like 15 years ago because I was a nurse, and I couldn't do anything with the business because it was just too tough to learn. Then she gave me the book called The Emotion Code, and Dr. Mel says, this is everything I taught you. Read it. And when I read it, boom, I said, this is it. I just knew this was the answer. And so it was just much more easier to follow the techniques. So if you ever just pick up the book called The Emotion Code, read it. It'll give you a lot of information that will help understand what the energy is and what she's teaching, complementing what she's already teaching you. And that's where I went. And then I spent 4 months working with a bunch of people using their fingers and using my fingers back and forth, because you're right, Mary, because it's hard to grab a hold of how your fingers and arms work. Mm-hmm. They're not, it's almost like a magnet. You ever work with the magnets and you can feel that polarity where it's kind of pulling together? Mm-hmm. And that's the way my fingers are. It took a long time to get comfortable getting a yes-no answer out of using my fingers. Other people I'm really good at, and some others are just, I can't get a clear yes and no. And I won't work with them because if I don't have a clear yes and no, I don't want to guess. So then I end up using my fingers and connecting with them first and then go into the session. Otherwise, it takes too long. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Sorry, Maria.
No, thank you. No, hey, we're here. I mean, if you notice, there's a lot of people that are chiming in and helping us. That's why I think the classes we have online here, these webinars, are as good as they are because of people like you and the other people that have been chiming in and telling me these little hints. And I change it. Just like I asked someone to send me, that thing that I totally forgot, but they said they would send it to me. And I'll put that in there, and then cell phones, about the cell phones, I think.
Yeah.
So it gets better and better and better. So no, we're all in this together. You know that. Yeah.
I have to be careful, and just like your work, some people just don't get it. So you just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
So when you talk about energy work, they're going, huh? So I've learned to be very careful how I approach it. And if they're just not interested, I just back off, because otherwise it looks kind of strange. But those who are familiar with it, they already get it. So it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have been around it, so it's not, and you have a lot of people that have already been around it and exposed to you, so they understand it. So, but someone else, it is one of the reasons why you need permission. I just can't walk up to somebody and just start doing it.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. You have to have permission from them. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So besides the emotions like Kevin works with, you can also test to see what nutrient's best. And he touched on that a little bit. But yes. You could also, is kelp, he used the example of kelp. Is kelp what would help you? Thyroid support or spirulina, which is the best in that category as well. Plus how many a day. Typically what you do is you keep testing, and then as soon as you've gone over, let's say I have 8 a day and I'm strong, the muscle test is strong, and then you go to 9 a day and it gets weak. Then you do 8 a day.
Sometimes for a week or 2 weeks, and then you can muscle test later on so you can drop, because you don't want to overdo it either.
Well, yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
like kinesiology part 2. That's pretty advanced for people. And, and this how long, it depends.
Right.
I don't like the how long, because let's say I have an infection and it says that I should take something for 2 weeks. Well, if I get a cold in a week and a half, that may set it a little bit longer. So basically, you got to like we said earlier, it's more of an art than a science. You have to, and there's some people like Dick Williams, every day before he takes his herbs, he muscle tests.
That's what I do.
See, I don't, because I'm lucky I get them in my body because I'm so busy. But I do my own little thing once in a while. And then you can take all the herbs that you use and put them in your hand and put them to your chest, right here where your thymus gland is, and test to see if they're going to be compatible. Because sometimes the herb is going to take you in one direction, like if you're taking capsicum, and then you test for slippery elm. Capsicum is a yang, slippery elm is a yin. They may counteract each other. So you can see if it's compatible as well. It's not like it'll make you sick if you're not, but it'll be not as effective. Then you can put have the person put their thumb on their pointer finger to see if what's causing a problem is environmental, and the middle finger if it's structural, the ring finger if it's emotional, the pinky if it is the homeostasis. Parasite is the pinky on the left hand. Yeast is a ring finger on the left hand. Kevin or anybody here, do you know what these other two are? I can't remember them.
Sorry, I don't use that technique. I just ask body.
Okay, well, if anybody knows that, let me know, because I can't remember what this one is. The middle finger and the pointer finger on the left hand. Now, I think this is how you're talking about pulling the fingers, right, Kevin?
Sort of.
Okay. Well, this isn't.
I use my ring finger in the left hand and the ring finger in the right hand, and intertwine the inside the other one, and just
pull it apart.
Yeah, try to pull it apart.
Okay.
If I can't pull it apart, it's test strong. If it pulls apart, test weak.
Right. So you can do that. I usually do the forefinger, the pointer finger, and the thumb. This would be me.
Oh, that's what I do for other people. Yes. For my own self, I use the ring and ring finger. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, you got it right.
All right. So I do it this way. If someone is weaker, if someone's really strong, then I do their pinky, because it's harder to keep the pinky closed.
The baseline question: my name is Kevin. It should test strong, and then restate your name. My name is Bob, and it should test weak. That's a baseline to go with.
Good. Alrighty. So then you can self-test, and this is what I do most of the time, because like Kevin said, you start talking about this stuff, and people think you're from Mars.
Yeah.
Right. So I had this one time was so funny. This guy was probably about 6'2", maybe weighed 340 pounds. So we're not talking a sissy here, right? And I muscle tested him, and he said, "No, you pushed harder the second time." Like, I didn't push harder the second time. I wouldn't convince him. So I did this, and I put, what you do is you take, again, the herb, and you put it on your chest. I had the person close their eyes. I don't know if it's necessary, but it seems to work better. And have them either think it over in their mind or actually say it out loud. Is this good for me? And this is after you know what their polarity is. And then I stand with them, stand to the side of them, so I can see if they tend to lean forward or go back. Just like I said, if something smells good, you go towards it. If something smells, you are repelled back. So I have them hold it like that and go forward or back. So I was doing that with this gentleman, and he was going forward, And he says, that's just because everyone goes forward. So I gave him a thing of female comfort. Didn't let him see what it was, and I put it in the chest, and he went back. He said, wait a minute. He tries again. He's trying to fight against it, but he went back. So this is what I like doing because they can't say you push harder or you pulled harder. I use this one a lot. Another thing you can do is you can take your thumb and your finger, usually the middle finger, and you go around in a circle. You put in like, I wish I could show you guys, but you like go like this with the two fingers together. So everybody do that. This is the easiest one to do. So go in a circle with your finger and then think of avocados. Is it still slippery?
No.
Oh, then you might not want to eat avocados. If you think cigarettes, does it get stickier or is it still smooth and slippery?
Mine's slippery. To me, being sticky is positive. Being slippery is negative.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
it's the other way that I was taught.
Because the magnet is strong when it's test strong, when it's stuck together, and when it's weak, it should be slippery. That's weak. That's the way I was taught.
Okay.
And that's the way I've been doing it for years.
Okay. Well, again, a lot has to do with intent.
Yeah. There you
So
go.
test on something that you know is good for you and see which way it works for you. So,
If you want to change the wording to it, to me, when it's stuck together, it tests strong. That makes sense?
yeah.
When it's slippery, it tests weak. It doesn't want to hold together. That's the way I look at it. Anyway.
Okay. So, again, I personally, well, first, let me show you something. If you have one point of reference, you can make a bunch of different conclusions from that one point of reference. If you have 2 points of reference, the conclusion is narrowed down, the possible conclusions, right? I do not use muscle testing alone. I ask questions. I might do iridology. I might do an itovie. I do more than one thing. I don't just do kinesiology. But if you're doing iridology, you can get different conclusions. If you do iridology and kinesiology, you're less likely to have so many different conclusions. You come up with the right answer. Okay, so before I asked Kevin to do whatever he was going to do, and if you wouldn't mind, Kevin, I'm an open
That's
book.
fine.
Do me. But before that, is there any closing or any other questions before I'm a guinea pig for Kevin?
No one's typing anything.
Okay, Kevin, hit me with your best shot.
Didn't I do a muscle testing session with you years ago?
Oh, Kevin, I don't remember.
I
A
could
lot.
have sworn I did one time.
I might have done one or two after that.
Because
Yeah.
if I remember right, you told me that when I don't remember exactly what I did, but you had a relationship with your mother, and your mother's always was pushing your buttons, is what you told me.
Well, that's what a mother's job is.
Yeah. Well, then after I did that session, she says she's not doing anything different, but she's not pushing my buttons anymore.
Ah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that statement? I remember that one. That's the only thing I remember from my session with you.
You know,
Anyway.
life is a blur. And it was at least 20 years ago,
Yeah.
if not more.
Well, somehow your perception changed, whatever I did, but I thought it was interesting.
Cool.
And that's what happens sometimes when you release something. All of a sudden, what was pushing your button is no longer pushing your button anymore. It's like, oh, okay, it's okay. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So you want me to do you, Mary? Is that what you're asking?
If you don't mind, show people
Okay.
what you do.
because I asked if it was a trapped emotion. I got no, but there's another one called a heart wall. And a heart wall is like a trapped emotion, but it's around your heart. Does that make any sense? It's like someone, you got divorced. Now you got your wall is around your heart. You don't want somebody in your life again. Something like that. That makes any sense. Anyway, but you got a heart wall. And I have a chart here when I go by. So if I'm talking, I'm looking at my chart. So, and there's column A and B, and there's a bunch of, there's rows and columns, so I can narrow down the word it's looking for. So I'm asking if it's column A. No. It's column B. Yes. And there's the odd rows. No. So then the rows 2, row 4, and then I got row 4. Depression. And there's 5 words in this column. There's depression, frustration, indecisive. That's all 3 are no. Panic. And I get a yes. And taken for granted is no. So in a panic, I got something panic. Now I got to find the age associated with panic. And I'm going to go. Let's go with, I try to break it down in segments. 0 to 30, no. 30 to 40, no. 40 to 50, yes. Okay, 40 to 45, no. 46, yes. So what happened at age 46 that you were in a panic mode?
Well, I was in the middle of a really lousy marriage.
Okay, now I'm going to say, and I'm not, is this it? And it goes, no. So go on with it, because I got a no out of it. You need to be more specific.
Okay.
What was the husband's name?
Ron.
Is this about Ron? No.
Which one of my many husbands? So embarrassing.
Well,
um,
now remember, the 46 is an age range between 45 and a half and 46 and a half. There's a moment in time, but I don't know. That's just the age right around that time. So remember, when I use, it's not exactly 46. It's just to get you in that area of time. So, and it's not about that situation. So go on. I mean, can you think of anything else that you were in a panic of?
Well, my mother died when I was around 47.
Bingo. That was it. Okay. I hit yes. Is this it? Any more to it? No, that was it. Can you?
Yeah, so it was really traumatic. I mean, my mom had a slight heart attack. We took her to the hospital, and everything was supposed to be fine. They did a catheterization. They poked a hole in her artery, and she bled to death.
Right.
And I was frantically trying to get people to come in and give her a blessing.
Right.
And that was so frustrating because...
And as you're talking, I'm going, is this it? Yes. Is this just? Yes. Each time, it's all that movie in time that you had because you were panicked. That was your panic. So now I'm going to do 3 swipes over my head with it. And see, I just brought that from the subconscious mind up to the conscious mind. It's been buried under a filing cabinet in the subconscious mind. It wants out. Now that I brought it up to the conscious mind, now I can release it, and you can release it. So, well,
there's something attached to that.
Yeah.
In that I feel guilty because she was in the one hospital. She was at Miners Hospital. You know what reputation they have. Yeah. So I insisted that she was moved to Altoona. So there's a lot of guilt that I have about that too. If I had just left her at that lousy hospital, they wouldn't have done a catheterization.
So let me add on to what you just said, Beat. So now I use affirmations too. I forgive myself for that situation, and you don't. And then so that's a trapped emotion in itself, because I can use, I forgive myself, I forgive others, I love who I am. I use affirmations, and a lot of times they don't believe those affirmations. One of my affirmations when I was working with Rosie is I can have a successful, happy relationship with a successful, happy woman, and it went flat out no because of all the things in my past that I had to get rid of that I was holding on to. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was single, because I was out of the frying pan, you know what I mean? So anyway, but yours is, I have to forgive that situation because there's an analogy of lack of forgiveness or lack of blame, meaning you're eating the rat poison expecting the rat to die. Which one's affecting the most? The person that's eating the rat poison or the rat that the Miners Hospital didn't do anything? Mm-hmm. You're actually beating yourself up about it, which is not good. That make any sense?
Yeah, I know. I've been trying really hard to release that guilt.
Well, now it's released. And it'll take not right away, but you may notice in the next few days, like, okay, I'm more at peace at it, if that makes any sense.
That would be
It's
great.
not yeah. But that was another trapped emotion you had because you felt guilty about it. The panic one, and then so that's what I do. Does that make sense? I hit it right on the head. Your body wanted to get rid of that. For some reason, that was the biggest. It wants to release the most highest percentage that I call it peeling the onion. Let's
Oh,
get
and
rid of the outer layers and peel off the outer layers, and it can only peel one at a time. But it wants the one that's the significant one that's in your way.
well,
That
I
makes any
can
sense.
see that being the number one thing because
Yeah.
that is undoubtedly the most traumatic thing that has happened to me,
Right.
except for losing my baby I mean, years before that. But that scenario that happened was very traumatic for me.
Right. And it's interesting how your body took me there. And every person I would do on this thing there, it would go in a different event or different word or different situation because they're all different. And your body wants to get rid of whatever it is you're hanging on to because it's not doing you any good.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if that makes any sense, because this event did not do you any good. You've been holding on to it. And it's been sitting there kind of irking at you, if you want to call it. And I'm not sure, I can ask the question, where was this trapped in this heart wall at? Well, it was in your heart, obviously.
And
Yeah.
I physically have heart problems that
Right.
I know
And
it emotionally won't heal.
Right. And those heart walls will actually cause heart problems because it's an energy field sitting in there causing havoc in your heart, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so sometimes, yeah, the underlying issues is sometimes emotional, not always physical. But a lot of times you got to release the emotional part of it to start the healing process physically.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's
now,
what Kevin.
okay, let's put it this way. You talked about a healing crisis in terms of herbs and stuff like that. You may go through that for the next few days, whether you start crying, thoughts, whatever. So understand that in the next few days you might have something different happening more emotionally, whether middle of the night, a nightmare or something. Just recognize you might have a healing crisis, okay?
Okie doke. All righty. Well, thank you.